I
Is
think we're looking good. Let me know once you see it on the stream. Oh, actually, I can see it now. Excellent condition at that. All right. Welcome to the Legacy Liftoff episode 5. This is my boy Tom. My name is Steve. We are going to break down the book Think and Grow Rich. Tom, how are you doing today, brother?
I am good. How are you, my guy?
I am great myself, man. Are you warm? I know that the snow came down surprisingly yesterday. We didn't even talk about that. How'd you deal with
Yeah,
that?
it was chilly, but
Chill.
the rain kind of washed it all out. It's just hella windy over here right now,
Mm-hmm.
actually.
Mm-hmm. All right, man. So let's get up into this book. I know I really enjoyed this book, but I'm curious to see how you felt about it since this is my second time. But this is your first time, so why don't you start off with maybe your impression on the book?
So I think overall, I don't I don't hate the book. You know what I mean? I don't mind the content and what the book kind of portrays. It's
Mm-hmm.
a build off. I mean, obviously the book we read last week for 3 Feet from Gold is basically a build off of Think and Grow Rich. So there was a lot of I guess in my opinion, a lot of things that kind of were repetitive. You know what I
Okay.
mean?
Yeah.
So there's just that aspect, but I think the underlying principles were highlighted in Think and Grow Rich, and they were more developed and kind of more well rounded than Think and Grow. I mean, than 3 Feet from Gold. So I thought that was a plus. You know, it's kind of getting the substance behind everything
Yeah.
compared to just having a very quick snippet, just like how 3 Feet from Gold was. But like I was saying to you earlier, I actually comparing the two, I actually preferred 3 Feet from Gold a lot more than this version, just simply because I think reading styles, I guess I enjoy like you pointed out, I think I kind of enjoy more of the narration, storytelling aspect of everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I found it interesting. It was still compelling enough. I just kind of like how Seth Speaks kind of rolled around. I think this was a book that I probably needed a printout. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like the physical book. I think this is 100% of the book you need in printed format, not an audio. I
Mm.
think every lesson and thought that it derived or kind of talked about would be probably emphasized or probably hit a lot harder if I was reading the book versus just listening to it in passing.
Yeah.
Because again, I think it just carried a lot of these similar. Obviously, it had the same similar themes and notions and principles. You know what I mean? So again, obviously, listening to it, it just sounded like I was listening to the same thing, except
Mm.
in a more long-winded fashion. But what about you? I know this is your second go around. Did you read the book like physically the first time, or did you also listen to it, or and
Mm-mm.
it's just your second listen?
So I listened 2 times, but the first
Okay.
time, I really like went in depth with the notes, and it's funny because you mentioned Seth Speaks, right? I remember when we were going through that book the first time, we said that we personally wouldn't recommend it. However, it would be very valuable to somebody who is at the right time, like they're picking it up at the right time and trying to like figure something out about themselves or maybe about life. So the first time I read this book, I was probably in that same kind of predicament where I really needed something like a pick me up, something where it just drove me a little bit more towards my purpose, and it really helped me in that way. However, the second time I didn't really like take as many notes. I kind of just took mental notes and enjoyed the audio a little bit more. Um, so yo, I enjoyed it both times. The first time I felt it was a little more impactful. Like I said, just because of the point in life that I was. Mind you, this was maybe only 3 or 4 months ago. So it's crazy how like your perspective can change within 3 to 4 months. But
Hmm.
we're out here starting our legacy off with all of these books. You know what I mean? So like my mind is
Right.
constantly growing. Ideas are constantly being fed to us in each and every one of these books that we're reading. You know. And like we've mentioned before, there are definitely some overlap, especially with this book and the last book we read, which was 3 Feet from Gold, mostly because it's the same author. So, like you said, it's a more in-depth version of 3 Feet from Gold. If you're craving more of like a narrative, a story, a short and sweet, I would say 3 Feet from Gold. But if you like, you prefer the information, the bullet points, for sure,
Hmm.
having the book copy of Think and Grow Rich is very very key. It's important. It's funny. We actually had one person, Tom, reach out to us through comments on our Instagram who said, and I quote, right? Don't quote me, but they were trying to say like Think and Grow Rich is a very very popular and often recommended book, which I find is the truth. However, they were saying in their opinion it didn't hit them as good. Like it. it didn't really resonate with them as much as maybe it
Okay.
was with other people. And I thought that was an interesting point. So I just want to suggest to our viewers that, hey, if you guys ever have questions, varying experiences and perspectives, hey, feel free to comment. Let us know. Get the conversation going. You know?
Right. Because no,
Yeah.
I agree with you wholeheartedly on that because mm, see, for me, this felt like a second listen through of it because again, because it carries the same ideas and principles, and it's just a matter of perspective of maybe like you were saying where you are in life and what
Mm-hmm.
it kind of does. Maybe it's something that kind of resonates with you more in the moment than it does for other people, and that kind of can change your outlook or perspective while reading.
Yeah.
But even though they covered some of the same things, Think and Grow Rich definitely delved deeper into a lot of points that Through Feet from Gold really didn't mention.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you want to kind of like jump into some of that stuff and let's
Yeah.
kind of like talk about that because
Yeah.
I have enough notes,
Okay.
kind of. So let me talk about a similarity, something I saw come up again and again. Like one thing it's a parallel, I guess. It's seek counsel instead of giving up, which is almost straight up picked up from 3 feet from gold.
Mm-hmm.
Just go and find. I think they even gave the same story. They talked about the same exact story, the with the miner, with the gold miner, and how they gave up a little too early. It was the same story, same example, and I just felt it was just funny just to see that come right back up and how important it is to actually seek counsel. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And it just brings it right back to making sure you have your eye on the ball and kind of know what you need to go into. But one thing I want to highlight, I Think and Grow Rich really hammered home the idea of mindset.
Absolutely.
I think that was the biggest thing I took away from like listening to it. I think having the right mindset and how you approach every given or any given situation was a lesson to be learned from Think and Grow Rich, which I didn't, which it came up in 3 Feet from Gold,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think they emphasized it as much. Like obviously you want to have perseverance, you want to have help, you want to have the right people running your circle, but I think one of the biggest things in Think and Grow Rich, no matter if you picked up the book and you started at any point, I think mindset is the first. It'll be the first thing that kind of comes to your mind. Having the right mindset, going into every situation with the right frame of mind is key. What do you think?
I agree. I actually, it's ironic you say that because my cousin has been asking me about some mindset books, and I would argue that all of the books we've read so far have all been mindset books.
I agree.
But I do agree with what you're saying. Think and Grow Rich dives so much more in depth into some of the mindset, just concepts, as opposed to some of the other books we've read.
hmm
Yeah.
It's funny that it falls. You say that, and it falls kind of in the mindset realm. It kind of relates. Maybe this is why I didn't really like resonate with it. It reminded me of Seth Speaks almost.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of if you think you can, you will, right? If you
Yeah.
mentally can build it, you like it shall be built. Like I think Seth Speaks and Think and Grow Rich kind of interweave with each other. And it's interesting if you think about it, both books were written a very long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, at least compared to today. But something that the parallel I drew was something had written down. We foolishly believe that our own limitations are the limitations of others, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was something I wrote from Think and Grow Rich, and it kind of resonated with me because it brings back to the concept of time from Seth Speaks. You know what I mean? It's what we see, what we perceive, and because we see and perceive that, we go and then put it on other people. You know what I mean? This is my notion of time. Like, if I want to meet you at 4 o'clock, this is what 4 o'clock is, you know? So, how it kind of relates to Think and Grow Rich is like, if I can't do this and me and you, if I'm not good at basketball, right? And I see somebody who's similarly built as me, who's from the same, neighborhood as me, you take those things and you set your own personal limitation, your own definition of what you can and cannot do, and you then impose that on other people. And I just found it interesting that they brought that up as, the notion of mindset, how you not only how you perceive yourself, right? It's also imperative how you perceive other people, because at a point you might start taking things from other people and then imposing it on yourself, and vice versa. What do you
Mm.
think?
Yeah. I didn't really realize how similar it was to Seth Speaks until you kind of brought those points up. It's funny because you and I we made fun of Seth Speaks a little bit, right? Like we were kind of like it's a little out there, it's a little this, a little that, and I resonate with this book so much, and here we are saying it's very similar. So I think it really just depends on how you're looking at it, right? Like if I were to take a more objective and less subjective look at Seth Speaks, I would argue that this is very similar. This book here is very similar. And like you said, maybe it's the style and the mindset of that older style of writing, because Napoleon Hill wrote this book a while ago, right? Um, and I think the difference is Seth Speaks, it's more of like we couldn't tell if it's based on facts. Whereas Think and Grow Rich, these are literally they compiled the thoughts and the narratives of like 50 or more successful men and women. People that we all think about, like Rockefeller, Carnegie, of the steel mill, like all of these great, great people. And I think it's funny that we laugh at one and we don't laugh at the other when they're in reality very, very same. They're very similar.
Oh yeah, it is kind of ironic if you think about it. But
Yeah.
for me, it's like it's because there's mentionings of your mind, your soul, your body. Like I have another thing written down, right? It says, "You are the master of your fate, the captain of your own soul," is
Hmm.
what I have written down. We have the power to control our thoughts. It's
Yeah.
like it's things like that which resonate with what Seth was in essence telling us, our subconscious develops and creates our physical appearance for the world. What
Hmm.
we believe we are, ends up being. And this, I feel as though Think and Grow Rich has a strong emphasis on the think part of it. If you think you can be rich, you can and will be rich. And I know part of it they talk about the 6 practical steps to translate desire into reality, which falls right into basically mindset, right? I'm gonna go through it real quick. Be definite with the amount you desire, right? Like how much money you want, what you're willing to give for that money you want, at what date or time you want to be able to prosper and collect that money, right? A plan, and you have to be ready to carry it out, a clear and concise statement on how to carry out the plan, and then you have to read the statement out loud twice a day so you can feel it and be it.
Yeah.
It's again, it fits right into the notion and narrative of one, having the right frame of mind and mindset, and then two, if you believe you can do it, you ultimately will be able to do it. And it falls straight in line with what Seth was kind of saying. Success and failure, time, everything is all relative. And so long as you can channel it, you can
Hmm.
manifest it. You know what I mean? That was like a lot of what I was getting from Think and Grow Rich. The more you can manifest it, the more you can obtain it or achieve it.
I love that. I think you put that beautifully. You know what's funny? I didn't know the name of the principles or the 6 steps, but it's funny because I have my own written down from the first time reading it down, the first time
Right.
reading the book. And I think it really plays into your point and how you said it beautifully is because the key behind that is to get into your subconscious, right? So me
Mhm.
reading it in the morning as I first wake up is to bring to my subconscious the awareness that this is what I want, this is what I need to do, and this is how I need to stay focused. And then it says to read it again once you retire after a long day, right? So like before you go to
Mhm.
bed, so that your subconscious can continue to think, imagine, and create it as you're sleeping.
Right.
I think that is the one thing that people fail to realize, right? So like it's not only like, oh, if I think I can be, but it's realistically like you can manifest. And when I say manifest, I don't mean you can make anything happen, but legitimately you can make very many things happen so long as
Mhm.
you put that image in your head, right? The image of you
It's
becoming a
interesting.
yeah, go ahead.
Right. Yeah, when you mention image, the one thing that comes to mind is kind of since you're an athlete, you would know like image training, it's not only do you, physically shoot the ball like in basketball for reference, if you shoot 1,000 shots, you're going to obviously be better or good at shooting shots, but it's completely different shooting a wide open shot in practice versus shooting a shot with somebody in front of you. But the whole notion of image training, like with shadow boxing, for example, you know what I mean, you're imagining an opponent in front of you and you're trying to figure out how to counter, how to move, how to react, and that translates automatically right into your game. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Just practice swings with baseball and golf, like all this image training that you can do, you know? It's funny because if you think about it like that, people if you are in sports, people will tell you to do image training of a sorts, right? So why can't you take that and directly translate it to something a little bit more abstract versus, a physical sport in a sense? But I just find it interesting that you bring that up.
Yeah.
You just manifest, like, you in your mind, you're creating this image, and then you're acting on that image.
I think
So another thing I want to mention. Oh no,
go.
God.
I was just gonna finish that thought off by saying, man, like this is probably one of those keys that a lot of people don't realize is a tool that they have. And it's right here. You don't need to buy it from anybody. You don't need to go seek anything. You create the vision that you want. That's just I just wanted to end it off with that because I feel like a lot of people it's overlooked. It's an overlooked skill that we all possess.
Right, but I think, so the reason why I think it's overlooked, or why people just kind of like can't channel it, is because it's hard.
Sure.
It's very abstract. You can imagine there's a fine line, as people say, there's a fine line between dreams and reality, and there's a fine line between dreams and wishful thinking, even. You know what I mean? And at what point do you draw the line in the sand and says this is where I want things to be, and this is where it's just made up. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like you said, you can make virtually anything happen, but you can't make everything happen, you know?
Yeah.
And I think there's a strong distinction between the two, and that's probably the reason why a lot of people, one, don't do it, and a lot of people really have trouble trying to focus on it.
Hmm. Hey, so we do have some people watching right now, and I just want to read off some of these comments if you would like to hear them.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So Mel is in here with us. We also have Lene, if I'm not mistaken. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but she said yes, she agrees. Seth was the subconscious for sure. She definitely agrees with that. She said that's why it's important to write down your thoughts and to visualize them as well. And then Lene says image training is like muscle memory and setting intentions and manifesting. It's like muscle memory for thought pattern, which I really agree with as well.
That's actually, yeah, no, it works the same way, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
I think.
It's the
Because
same tool. It's the same tool.
no, if you think about it, you know how when people say if you set goals, you should write your goals down, and like that helps manifest it into reality. I think that works in the same essence as, the image training that we're all kind of talking about.
Hmm.
The more you see it, like the more you see it and the more you kind of visualize it, right? The easier it is, or easier it becomes for you to actually, act out, create it, carry on, and kind of go through everything. It's just funny because as we talk about that image training and muscle memory, something that Think and Grow Rich mentions is autosuggestion and the law of autosuggestion.
Hmm.
You want to talk about that? Because I
Um,
think it works almost the same. I think it kind of like intertwines with all this we're talking about.
how about you start off and then I'll go back into it because I feel like I've been talking a lot too. But you start off with your thoughts on it and I'll bounce off of you on the image
So
training.
so Okay, okay. So like how image training and auto suggestion kind of work hand in hand for me is auto suggestion is basically your subconscious kind of building off and reacting to what you already subconsciously believe and think, right? So if you want to parallel that with how image training works, if you paint and perceive yourself as a very positive, successful entrepreneur, right? Just using that as an example, the law and theory of auto suggestion will automatically channel basically your thoughts and kind of channel how everything goes through a filter. You know what I mean? It's going to suggest in your mind steps and things you should do to achieve and obtain your dream. So it works both ways, as the book kind of like lays it out. Autosuggestion can work to your benefit if you have a positive mindset and positive thoughts to achieve your goal. But if you start having self-doubt, fear, and any sort of insecurity or ambiguity, autosuggestion automatically fills in all the spaces or the gaps in between, and it will just leave you and fill you with more negativity. So I think the law of autosuggestion it's funny more so than anything, because I feel as though auto suggestion can come in even if you're feeling positive, because you can be doing everything right and think you're moving in a positive way, but your subconscious might not fully believe in your actions yet,
Hmm.
And I think if you don't fully believe in your actions, your subconscious won't believe in it, and two, people around you won't believe in it. So I think it's really important, tying this all back to the image training, it's really important to actually envision something that's one, achievable,
Mm-hmm.
obtainable, and know how you're going to achieve it, because you have to hit every level almost for auto suggestion to basically work in your favor. I think auto suggestion is one of those things that does not work in your favor at all, unless you make it work into your favor. But that's my 2 cents. What do you think?
I think you're placing everything beautifully today, man. You're on fire. Listen, that was perfect.
It's a
I
Monday, bro.
agree.
It's a work day.
I agree wholeheartedly, man. Shout out to MLK. Happy Martin Luther King Day to people who are watching right now. Um, hey, you're right. It's a tool, and just like any other tool, right? You can use it in a good way or in a bad way. You can screw the project up, or you can really utilize it as a piece in your arsenal to help you, right? So, like you said, auto suggestion works whether it be positive or negative. So, I think the distinction that you made that is important is that sometimes you can fool yourself, right? Like you can be doing things that may be positive, like you argued, but if your
Hmm.
subconscious, within your subconscious, if you still firmly do not believe in yourself, you can still
Right.
auto suggest the negativity. So I think that's a great point because there's a lot of people who don't believe in themselves, right? And it's fair. It's fair because we all have to teach ourselves to love ourselves, to believe in ourselves, etc. But you can see some of those actions coming out, right? You can see some of the bad
Right.
auto suggestion happening to the people who don't firmly believe in themselves. And I feel like that's why it's so important to get that out of the way, to get those subconscious thoughts and change them in a positive light, right? Essentially, just believing in yourself is such an important part of becoming who you are and finding out what it is that you want to be doing in this life. And like you said, man, it's a tool that, if utilized correctly, can really really help you, and if utilized incorrectly, can be a detriment to you, even if you're moving
Yeah.
in the right path.
Right. I agree, because so this kind of falls squarely on with the idea of how failures really start defining people. It's like you can start taking positive actions, right? But then failures or setbacks kind of, you can easily say like, oh, like, okay, like you learn from all mistakes, you learn from all failures, we keep on growing, we keep on moving in. But subconsciously, that could really still affect you. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Although you paint this outward projection of, it's fine, it's all right, but that failure actually really set you back on the inside and internally, and you don't address it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's when autosuggestion really works against you, because you're attempting to convince yourself that although the negative thing that happened is a positive thing, you don't quite believe it's a positive thing yet. And I think that's probably one of the hardest things people kind of go through, and I think why this whole abstract theory of, believing, image training, and then manifesting is so difficult, because you can think, believe, and manifest, however, things just might not be going your way, and then the evils that
Mm-hmm.
seem to dwell within you are always working against you. I think the book actually highlights something really well, that there are three enemies you must eliminate from your life in order to be successful, and it is fear, indecision, and doubt. And they all kind of breed and intertwine with each other and affect you. And I think that ties right into what we're talking about, is autosuggestion is a tool and it will benefit you. However, if you let fear, indecisiveness, and doubt subconsciously sneak around too long or dwell on it too long, it kind of defeats the purpose of thinking positive, because you're not really thinking positive. You're allowing all these lingering feelings to do just that, linger and hold you back. They're kind of like the shackles of your past, you know?
Mm.
And it's kind of hard to kind of move forward with it.
Damn, you're on fire, bro.
But I'm just, brain's moving
Got
all
you.
the way today.
The gears
It's
are
moving
working.
all the
Hey, let me
way.
bring this up real quick.
Go ahead.
I know that you enjoy the narrative part of it, so as opposed to just keep speaking about theory, we can get back to it. But I want to just bring up this story real quick and kind of hear your perspective. The story about the child who was born and could not hear fully. He
Right.
could not hear fully, and his parents, in a way, auto suggested, and they willed it for him to hear. Right. So like, I just want to hear firstly, maybe if you want to sum up the story in your words, if you remember it. If not, I can sum it up. But I just want to hear your perspective on that and what you thought about that story in regards to the child who couldn't hear.
Right, I'll give the quick 2 minute version. So the author of the book, his son was born and he had some sort of deformity with his ear. I think it was like his eardrum or something, but he just could not hear. He did not have the ability to hear at all. And all the medical professionals said that your son is going to be deaf. He's not going to be able to hear point blank and period. And even in the future, as his son has proven that he can hear, interact, and work perfectly fine, the doctors are still saying medically he cannot hear. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
impossible. It's an improbability. And what happened was the author basically, to emphasize the idea of positive mindset and manifestation, he did everything in his power to make sure his child believed he could hear. He basically essentially he said he willed it for his child. He basically, I forget which book mentioned this, turning a disability. It was David and Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell. Turning your look at that.
Yeah.
Look at that. It's basically turning your disability into you know, into something that works for you. The sheer fact that he could not hear didn't hamper him in any way because he essentially used that as motivation, and that kind of ended up fueling what he did in the future. You know what I mean? And I just think it's interesting how you can, this is my take on it, that you can outwardly project your manifestation and your belief and thoughts onto someone else, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially, it just shows how malleable the child's mind is, right?
Yeah.
So here's my strife with this. It works really well, but if you think about it, people project their own ideas, opinions, and everything outwardly on you every single time. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? You do it like the quote, like what I was mentioning at the beginning of this is where we kind of outwardly project our limitations onto other people, you know? And it kind of works one and the same. I think it's a positive and it's a negative because at a certain point, obviously in this situation, it kind of worked out well. But imagine in like a flip situation, growing up Asian, right? Growing up in an Asian household, the notion of you have to be better at school, get the best grades, be better than your cousin's family, be better than your neighbor's sister's aunt's nephew, and this it's a negative manifestation, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then you strive to conform to that. And I think this story kind of emphasizes how we can ultimately conform to things that we might necessarily conform to. You know?
Yeah.
Again, it could be a positive and it could be a negative. In this case, the child believed that he can hear. It manifested itself into something very positive and beneficial. But there's also the exact instances where it could work negatively, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think what really worked for the author was that not only was he and his wife trying to present this to the child, he was also very patient, which is
Mm-hmm.
again something I think preached also with the whole mindset theory is that you have to have a patient mindset, especially with things that might seem impossible.
Mm.
And then I think too little too often we aren't patient with our own personal growth, our own development, which falls right in line with doubt. Why a lot of people don't seem to succeed is because they see, people becoming rich overnight on social media. There's just so many things, or like again, there are so many outward reflections of things that we end up attaching ourselves to, you know? So what do you think? That I feel as though that was a little long-winded tangent to say I agree and I also disagree with the story, but what do you think about it?
Um, I see your point. I see your point, especially when I'm thinking of the Asian household and the Asian family, right? And this is not like any disrespect because we are Asian, right? So I just think we can speak on it from an experience standpoint.
Right.
Um, like you said, parents are they're in a position of power, and children are very impressionable. So when you have parents who have the right mindset, they have the right mindset, but if they don't have the right approach, they can really damage children and damage you, right? And like you can grow up and have all of this baggage
Hmm.
essentially because as a result of some of that that stuff that we're talking about. Parents can be, imposing on you maybe a negative mindset, even though they mean well. I feel like most parents mean well for their children, but sometimes the mindset
Right.
or the approach can be negative or positive.
Hmm.
Maybe it works on one child and it doesn't work the same on the other child. It harms one child, but it helps the other child. So like you're very correct. It's very important that parents make the distinction in what approach works and what approach doesn't work, right? Like they need to kind of keep their bias out of it because children are so impressionable that whatever they say, we soak up, right? Whatever our parents say and teach us, we soak up. Whatever they do, we soak up subconsciously. And now as adults, we deal with those ramifications, whether it was good or bad. And you can kind of see it within yourself. I ask myself all the time, man, where did I get this negative behavior? It's probably because it was learned behavior, right? I can point out and see like, oh, like this is where I got from my dad. This is what I got from my mom. Not even biologically, just our environmentally, right? Like sociologically,
Right.
psychologically. So I agree with you, man. It's a tool. Here's a good example. Some kids they can really benefit from it. Some kids can really detriment from it just from their parents teaching alone.
Hmm.
Um,
And I think, especially as children, that's kind of like your first role model and the first like real interaction you get with people, you know. And
mm-hmm.
it's like it leaves a lasting impression because what what might be okay in your house might not be okay in general. And it goes from a like a micro to a macro level. What might be cool in your neighborhood might not be cool in the district. What might be cool in the district might not be cool in the state. What might not be, what's fine in the state in New Jersey might not be, the same for people in Texas or Idaho or
Mm.
California. You know what I mean? It's really interesting that something so simple from a macro level can actually like affect people on a larger scale. But here's something I thought was interesting, and every time I heard that line, I thought of Drake. But so the concept of starting from the bottom and how starting from the bottom is a good idea, but it's actually not the best idea. Do you want to elaborate on that? What do you think?
I don't remember this point in the book. I can elaborate, but maybe if you give some insight first, I can better elaborate.
Okay, so I think it fell in line with I can't. It came after the story of his son,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it was talking about the lady who provided kind of like the professional service where she helped her own son basically skip a couple steps instead of starting from the bottom,
Yeah.
right? He managed to get a mid-management job, which, skipped a couple of steps and how that really affects his professional outlook and his mindset, right? So the issue I resonate with this because it's something I tell a lot of people and I mention to a lot of people sometimes is the notion of being stuck, right?
Mm.
Being complacent, getting trapped in your own mind and your thought and just being okay with where you are and being getting too comfortable, right? So the notion was if you start from the bottom, it's fine, it's cool, right? But the issue of being at the bottom, you're at the bottom with everyone else who is at the bottom. And not everyone at the bottom aspires to climb,
Mm-hmm.
right? And again, back to the whole outward projection of how people start putting their own beliefs and how their own attitudes and what you're around kind of, you kind of soak that up and you kind of like act on it, right? It works the same way. If you're on the bottom and you don't have this drive, even if you have the drive, the tenacity, and everything you want to do to climb, let's just use a corporate environment, right? You want to climb the corporate ladder, you want to be the CEO, right? But if and you're starting at the bottom, you might have that drive today, but are you going to still have that same drive and passion next week, the week after, the year after? What if you get turned down for promotion? Like there's just so many other negative influences that you're seeing. So not only are the people not so out of 100 people on the bottom with you, maybe there's four of you guys who really have that outward, outgoing, I want to climb the ladder, and everyone else doesn't.
Yeah.
That affects your mental state, you know? So how this kind of fell in line with everything was the lady's son managed to get into middle management. Everyone on middle management wasn't comfortable. It's basically a matter of perspective and being able to be dropped into a place with a completely different perspective to start with, and I think that's really important that we constantly evaluate
Mm-hmm.
and think of where we are in life, right? Like if you don't it's kind of like the notion you gotta when you're traveling or something you gotta stop and smell the rose petals and you gotta enjoy the moment, right? You gotta realize where you are, what you're doing, what's going on, what's above you, what's below you, what's to your left, what's to your right. And I think that story of not starting from the bottom. Because how many times have you heard people say that? Oh, like, yeah, just start from the bottom and work your way up. Just start from the bottom and work your way up. Like, it's not as easy as people say. This isn't the 1950s where that's, you know, completely acceptable and it completely works. Like in today's day and age, I feel as though it's hard. It's hard
Mhm.
out there on the bottom, dude. What do you think? You want to expand, elaborate on that?
Yeah, so I know exactly what story you're talking about now. I agree that her putting her son in that position in the manner in which she did, and the perspective the book took, really, really opens my eyes in regards to some of that. Right. Two things I was thinking of while you were talking. Number one is that it's a double-edged sword, right? So like putting yourself in a predicament where you start from the bottom
Mhm.
definitely could benefit you, but it could hurt you, like you said, because you're wasting time. There's no sense of urgency, right? Like not everybody can start from the bottom and be okay. Not everybody can start from the bottom and get to the top. And like you said, the mindset with the people on the bottom, it can really deter you from maybe even thinking about climbing because now you're taking. Let's take like something we read from another book. You're basically who you spend the most time with. The five people you spend the most time with, that's who you are. So if you're spending with people all on the
Right.
bottom all the time, like that's how you're gonna aspire to be, similar to them, right? It's funny because in life, this is a great example. And I don't mean to down anybody. My mindset's just always been different. When I started working at my first job was at Burlington Coat Factory. There was a woman there who was an amazing woman. She had a child who was disabled, and she worked there for years. Like this was like her 25th year. And I always ask myself, like, why is it that she doesn't aspire for more? Doesn't she think she's more valuable than this? Right? Doesn't she think
Right.
that she can take care of her disabled child a little better than this? And I honestly felt bad for her because it was like that mindset, once you're on the bottom for so long, it seems like, it kind of just sets in. Like you said, the complacency. I know for a
Hmm.
fact with her heart, with her work ethic, with she knows her why so much. It's for her child. She worked every day for her child with no questions asked, right? But it was like, why not do better? And my thing is like, maybe that's not for everybody. Not everybody has that mindset. And maybe they did have that mindset, like you said, for a week, but week two came, week three came, week four came, 2, 3 years came. Here she is still there.
Hmm.
So my point is not to downplay her or not to downplay her mindset. My point was just to say that the perspective when you're on the bottom, the perspective when you're thinking about some of these things and making some of these decisions really, really changes and really matters, right? Drastically,
Right.
depending on who it is that you're talking to. So I just thought that was something I was thinking about while you were talking about it.
I just came up like this one thing that just came into my mind as you were saying that the whole, the whole notion of what the book talks about specialized knowledge and why it's important to gain specialized knowledge. And specialized knowledge is not, a college degree. And in today's day and age, I think we're starting to really learn that the college degree really doesn't mean as much or is not as valuable as it once was.
Mm-hmm.
Back when this book was probably being written, sure, the college degree probably meant it, like like the value was there, but in today's day and age it's 50-50. It depends on who you ask, right? So I just think of, as you're saying that, I was thinking of the notion of minimum wage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the whole debate that's around minimum wage, and then the whole concept of specialized knowledge and how it's two sides of the aisle, basically. People are asking for a higher minimum wage to combat inflation, to be able to support themselves, right? And then on the flip side of it, people are saying like, I'm a software engineer making $20 an hour. Like, why should somebody who works at Burlington Coat Factory make the same $20 an hour? It devalues, my specialized knowledge, right? And it's just funny, not to really get into the weeds of that argument, but it's just interesting that that was the first thing that came into my mind as you were talking about that was the idea of complacency, right? If we raise minimum wage so high, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does it start to and majority of the time minimum wage jobs come from, they start at the bottom. That's the bottom, like in society, generally speaking,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I just find it interesting, would that kind of spur more complacency? You know what I mean? Like if you can make, three grand a week working at McDonald's, like shit, why not? Right? Why put myself in six figures worth of debt for a degree that's going to pay me a salary that when you divide all of it, it's going to equal exactly what I would have put in the same amount of hours, you know? And I find that interesting. especially just using, I don't know how much you ended up going because you got your accounting degree, and I know accountants starting out, you make anywhere between 55 to $60,000 generally, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much in debt you are or if you are in any, but just imagine using that as your basic benchmark, like that comes out to be maybe 20 something dollars an hour realistically if you do the math. And it's just like it just, it interests me. It just makes me think, do we start, is that a situation where you start devaluing specialized knowledge in turn for more comfortability?
Mm.
But the book harps on, the idea of specialized knowledge, right? And
I
it says it's really important to get specialized knowledge. Good.
just to touch base on that before I forget what I was gonna say. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Um, it's hard because we've been there, right? Like we've worked in these jobs where it's minimum wage. We know the fucking work. It's hard. It's hard. It's grueling, but it doesn't require specialized knowledge. That's the difference, right? As long as you're willing to work hard, there's going to be somebody to pay you. However, you can't assume that not you can't assume. You're not entitled to the payment that somebody has specialized knowledge gets. So you're right. If the minimum wage starts to raise and raise and raise, now the argument with inflation and whatnot, okay, that's a whole different argument. We're not going to get into the weeds of that. But my point is, if you're paid the same as somebody who has specialized knowledge, what is the incentive for the person to now go, the child who's
Right.
looking up to now go and get that specialized knowledge? So I agree. There's a thin line between like, okay, are you entitled this? I don't think so. Nobody's entitled to
Mhm.
anything, right? We live in a capitalistic society in the US of A where you can
Mhm.
go and earn your wage, earn what it is that you
Right.
believe you're worth. So if I believe that I'm worth, I don't even know what minimum wage is now. $10, 7.25, $12, something like that, right? Let's
It
just say it's
depends.
right.
I think it's like 11, 12. It's like 12, $13 in Jersey.
Let's say $13. When we were in high school, $13 is a lot of money,
Right.
right? But it's for those kinds of jobs I feel like generally are for people who are just getting into the workforce or people who are trying to build upon something, right? That's the
Right.
argument I hear all the time when like economists are talking about it. They're like those jobs aren't meant to be
Fully
lifelong
sustainable.
jobs, so to
Right.
speak.
Right.
Those that basic level because it's not like you can't grow within the company. I'm sure like the person I was talking about from Burlington Co Factory, she was a manager. Okay, from
Right.
manager you can go corporate. From corporate you can even own your own store. Like there's levels to it. But I guess my point is I agree with you. I'm
Right.
not sure if it causes complacency or not, but to tie back to the book, because I feel like I'm going on a rant outside of the book. To tie back to the book, this book teaches us to have. It harps on specialized knowledge, like you said. And when I think of specialized knowledge, I don't think my degree in accountancy can be considered specialized knowledge anymore. And why do I say that? Because it was a curriculum that anybody who has the credentials and the money or the time can go and pursue.
Right.
I guess when I think specialized knowledge, I think what differentiates me from the majority? What makes me the
Okay.
minority, right? So when I think of accountant, let's say like, okay, not only do I have my accounting degree, but I have top tier information on how to give you the best taxes in your business, the best taxes, the best money, and the most money back, right? I would consider like that specialized knowledge within the field. And I feel like those people deserve whatever they're worth, man. Like, it is whatever you make it. Or I don't know, whatever your wage is, right? So I feel like people who have specialized knowledge like that, they deserve top tier pay because they're saving you headache. They're saving you this, that, and the third, right? As opposed to like somebody, and that's why I don't want to say specific jobs, like somebody but I keep thinking somebody working at McDonald's. They're
Mhm.
important in society. They play a vital role, but it's not supposed to be a forever position.
Mhm.
You know?
Right. So here, let me turn this, since we're on this notion of specialized knowledge, which I think is, one, it's important in the book, right?
Mm-hmm.
And two, I think it's just spurring a very interesting thought process right now. So, does the advent of the internet, right, devalue specialized knowledge in any way whatsoever, which in turn would help the argument of why we need a higher minimum wage and why, specialized knowledge, where there's this gray line between what's actually specialized now. You know what I mean? Like, perfect example. I'll use you as an example, right? Because you're fixing up the Airbnb, you're doing that whole nine. If anyone's following you on your journey, they see you basically remodeled kind of, and you're redoing everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you're not a construction worker, you're not a carpenter, you're not a, somebody in the trades per se. where specialized knowledge is required. Like in essence, if you're doing tile work, you need specialized knowledge, right?
Hmm.
So my question is does the advent of the internet and everything that allows you to gain this specialized knowledge to a degree kind of devalues the like specialized knowledge, and where do we draw the line in the sand to say this is specialized knowledge at this point in time, this warrants more versus everything else is one and the same and it can be learned by anyone.
I have the perfect response. I think. So to answer your first question, does the advent of the internet devalue specialized knowledge? My answer is no. And why do I say no? I do agree that everybody can get the same knowledge, but not everybody can have the same expertise when it comes to that. For example, you brought up me working on my Airbnb. True. I am currently doing that and learning off of the great YouTube University. All right, that's where I'm learning from. Everything
That's
that
where you
I
get the
that
degree.
yeah, like this is a lot of the things that I'm getting into, whether it be painting, whether it be doing floor work, doing skimming coating, whatever the case may be. I do have the knowledge to do it, and I can replicate that. But it doesn't mean that I can do it at the level of somebody who has that specialized
Right.
knowledge. So that's why I say no, and it's not a firm no. It's just kind of like it's a gray line because I could get better at whatever it is that I'm trying to do. But that's the difference between a professional and a novice. So I'm a novice at most of these things, if you would even consider it that. But there are
Agree.
people who I could hire them. They could do it in much quicker time. They could do it on a much more professional quality level. So that's the
Right.
only reason why I say no, because there's levels to all of this that we're talking about, right? That's the only reason. Because, like, for instance, I'll give you an example. You're a lawyer. You're probably, not probably, I'm sure you're great at whatever it is that you do. But that's not to say that the person who you represent couldn't, in theory, learn through the internet
Right.
what it is that you're going to be representing them with, right? It's not like they
Right.
couldn't. They could. It just wouldn't be at the expertise that you have.
Right.
Hmm.
Which, okay, draws me to I agree with everything you said. I only brought up the point, from an argument standpoint. But I agree with everything you're saying, and the example you just brought up between me being a lawyer and how that kind of like that whole thing works with the advent of internet lawyers where people look things up and they just think they know better than their attorney, and I don't know why they're still there looking for an attorney if they know so much, but
Right.
that's besides the point. So my question here then is, I think it relates to the last point I made, which is at what point do we consider it still specialized? Not like where do we start, where do we go from black and white and the gray zone, but like where is the real starting point? Do we fall back on saying, specialized knowledge equals some sort of education in which you learn, right? Or kind of what you are also alluding to, specialized knowledge is something you gain and experienced in, right? Because everyone can learn the same things but apply it very differently, and some could be better at it, some could be worse at it. You know what I mean? Like the study of law is the same exact way. People go to law school, not everybody comes out with the same paying jobs, and not
Mm.
everybody can do the same things other people can do, right? Other people specialize even further than just being in the law generally. You know what I mean? So what do you think that specialized knowledge really is defined as then? You know what I mean? Is it experience, or is it, because we're talking about the devaluation of a college degree kind of, you know what I mean? So like where do you draw that line? I'm just interested to see what you think.
I think I would personally say results. The proof is in the pudding, right? So when I think of the examples we brought up, I just think of results. So it's the person who, with whatever knowledge that they have, can provide results in whatever it is that they're pursuing. So if it's a lawyer, results would be getting the verdict that they desire for their client. If it's a person who does tile work, it's the result of doing like tile work that's exceptional, right? That, like I said, it's no longer the majority of work, it's the minority. But
Hmm.
like I said, right, there's just levels to stuff, I guess. I just think that's my perspective, that there's levels,
Hmm.
because it's not to say that somebody who represents themselves can't get a verdict that they want, or to do towel in the way that they want. Like, I'm sure I'll be able to do fine. Like, I'm sure that
Right.
my results will be fine. But I guess just the consistency of results, right? So, like, I don't know if I can do the difference between me and somebody who can really do tile work is maybe I do it great one time. They do it great every single time.
Hmm. It's consistency.
Consistency,
Right.
consistency with
I
getting that result.
right. I bring it up because I have this written down because it's from the book, right? Success equals the continuous pursuit of knowledge.
Ooh.
So that's why I asked, like, what do you think the the line is then for specialized knowledge? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
is it do you gain it from like doing things, and that's how you get your knowledge through experience, or is knowledge being defined as, book smart, things you learn in class, things you learn online, whatever it may be? And that's the whole reason why I delved into this kind of debate, because it's subjective. You know what I mean? Because the
Mm-hmm.
book defines it so broadly, right? And just in general, I feel as though in general people would probably think, knowledge is school. You know what I mean? Formal education is what I think people would define knowledge as, right? And even in a sense, I do too, to an extent, right? Some sort of formal education or a formal way of obtaining that knowledge. But I just found it interesting that we share, at least we share a very similar, perspective on it. But I just found it's interesting that the book mentions like specifically the word knowledge, and when you
Yeah.
think of knowledge, you kind of tie it into books. Is just how I look at it. So that's just where I thought the author was kind of going with it. I was just interested to see where you were going with it. But
Okay.
it's
Hey.
funny because I'm looking at our chat right now.
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry to cut you off. Mel said Starbucks where she is paying $22 an hour.
Bro, like that's more than some collegiate, graduates are getting paid. Not that. That's 100%. I'm sure. I'm sure of it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
I
sure of
I,
it.
I agree.
All right, listen, I want to bring this up since we just brought it up as well in regards
Mm,
to the knowledge and being educated. Okay, within the book it says it defined that education doesn't necessarily mean book smarts, right? It said that
right.
the root word for educate in Latin is educo, which means to deduce, draw, to draw out or draw from within. I really like that explanation of what education is because we know many people who are educated like book smart
Right.
who don't know shit.
Right. It doesn't translate.
I would argue that I don't know shit about accounting. I know some things.
I
I know
don't.
enough about accounting, but I don't know anything that I don't practice. More to your
Right.
point, where we say like experience, right?
Hmm.
It also says, here's a quote: "Any man is educated if he knows where to get knowledge and of what he needs." And I think the point is, it ties into the 3 feet from gold, counsel, getting
Hmm.
counsel. Oh, okay, perfect. The example I'm thinking of from the book is
Look at that.
there was a person, I can't remember if it was a president. I want to say it was a president who was on trial. Correct me if I'm mistaken, because you might remember too. He was on trial, and the lawyer was asking him all of these kind of like irrelevant questions, but trying
Yeah, it's
to.
Henry Ford,
That's
right?
who it was,
Yeah,
Ford. So
it's
that
Henry
I
Ford,
said president, but no, Henry Ford, right?
CEO of Ford Motors
Exactly.
during
Okay.
the time. Right. Right.
So they were trying basically to deduce from the questions that he's incompetent. However, what he was saying was, and he killed the lawyer by saying this. He was saying like, I could push a button right now and have all of the answers that you want from many, many men way smarter than me. And
Right.
his point in saying that was that like he didn't have to really be book smart or educated in order to run forward, right? In order to
Right.
provide and bring together all of these great and amazing people who could give you any answer that you wanted. And he kind of shut the lawyer down by saying that. It was just one line. Like basically, I could just in a push of a button, I can answer all the questions you want. But you couldn't do the
Right.
same with your specialized education.
Right.
So what was your thoughts on that?
I had a just to bounce off kind of what you were talking about, and this kind of answers our my own question from earlier, right? There's a
Mm-hmm.
quote from the book that goes, "Perfection comes with practice, not merely reading instructions." Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that ties right into what we talk about with knowledge and all that. Like, yeah, sure, you can read, you can have the formal education, and you can get all of it, but without doing it, you know what I mean? You actually have to live and breathe it, let's just say, you know?
Yeah.
And that's how you actually know and you become an expert in something and have the knowledge that you need to achieve whatever it is you're looking for to achieve. And I just find that notion Henry Ford's logic, right? I think it's very sound, and if you watch any entrepreneur today in today's day and age, whether it be on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram, or whatever the medium may be, that is a very common theme, right? If I don't know it, I'll hire somebody who does, right? If I can't do it, I'll get somebody who can, you know? And I just found it's really it's kind of crazy if you really think about it, right? How that kind of just like, what's the point of all these questions, right? Like I don't need to answer it. Like there's no need for me to memorize trivial things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which brings me to the this point that I remember. I forget what's his name. Dang, his name really escapes me right now. I want to say his name is like Gary V.
Yeah.
I think it was. You know who I'm talking about?
Gary
It's like
Vaynerchuk. Yep.
he mentions like the advent of technology and the Internet of Things and the cell phone, and he goes like the fundamental way school is teaching kids nowadays makes no sense. Why are you teaching or forcing kids to like practice memorization when all the information and all the answers you need are at the push of a button? Kind of like
Hmm.
Henry Ford said, I can have all the answers I need at the push of a button. I shouldn't bother filling my mind with such trivial things. And I just find this is a very good parallel, and that as we were talking about that kind of image resonated with me because it's true. I'm not good at multiplication, but if I need to multiply something, I got a calculator on my phone. I can just hold it and Siri can do the math for me now. You know what I mean? If I want to know what the capital of some random
Djibouti.
Massachusetts,
Right.
or you know what I mean? If I want to know the capital of, Rwanda, like the
Yeah.
internet will tell me. I can find that information out immediately. If I wanted to find the longitude and latitude, you know, of any given city in the world, it's all at my fingertips. So it kind of I say all that to just to emphasize the fact that it really starts to bring credence to the notion of practice makes perfect. And this ties right back in with the whole idea of, image training and,
Hmm.
visualizing your success, right? If you practice visualization and practice seeing yourself where you are, right? Eventually you would get there because in theory, practice does make perfect.
Hmm.
So, what do you think of that? Like, what do you think about all this shit basically getting tied in together? How about that? Right? What do you think
Uh,
about that?
Firstly, I seen that a comment. Melly said that she loves how all these books resonate with one another, and I agree. I think what it is that the more and more I'm reading, because like I told you, when I was younger, I just didn't really. I
Right,
don't know if it's that I didn't enjoy or that I didn't understand, or maybe a combination of both. But now, as we're reading, and I'm an adult, and I can deduct and analyze some of these things, the inform, the answers to all of our questions are right in front of our eyes. We don't need to read 100 books for us to know, the principles of ikigai. We know we need to eat healthier. We know we need to spend more time and slow things down. We know we need to flow, right? Similar with
right,
any of these books that we're reading. I just think that we just have to apply some of it, right? Like,
right,
be less, like, think, imagine, apply, right? Or whatever it
right,
is that they say, like whatever their formula is. But for me, it's more like, all right, think, but don't think too much, right?
right.
Like, ask questions, but don't ask too many questions. Be more active. Similar to what you said earlier, there was three things: indecision, doubt, and procrastination,
Fear, fear, fear,
and
fear.
fear. I agree wholeheartedly. Those are the three things that hold any one of us back from
Right,
achieving our best selves, right? But it's just because I know that doesn't mean that I'm not going to be fearful. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to be
right,
indecisive or doubt myself. But the
right.
more and more I apply it,
Hmm.
the better the results, the better me I get, the better the podcast is, the better our day-to-day lives are, things of that nature. So I just think
Right.
it's like all of these things that we know, we just need to apply. And it's really great to reaffirm with these readings, each and every one of them, when they're kind of reaffirming our thoughts, or maybe even changing our thoughts in a way that's reaffirming.
Right. It's really interesting if you kind of like tie it all together because so the full quote from the in regards to those three things, right? It's to be successful, you must eliminate three enemies from your life: fear, indecision, doubt, because those three things disconnect you from your sixth sense, right?
Hmm.
And realistically, if you want to think about what your sixth sense is, let's bring this right back to Seth,
Seth
right? Your sixth
speaks,
sense is
yeah.
it's your subconscious, right? It's
Yeah.
your own ability to manifest and, outwardly project what you want to be into the world, right? Like that's what your sixth sense really is. It's the ability to take yourself out and then put yourself in whatever position you want it to be put in, right? And
Hmm.
wholeheartedly, I don't think you can eliminate those three enemies. You know what I mean? It's easier said than done. One, two. I just think it's impractical. One, to eliminate fear because you're always going to be fearful, right? There's
Yeah.
always going to be something that scares you. Starting a new venture, diving into something. There's a reason why people make money doing things like risk analysis, right?
Yeah.
Perceiving risk. It's kind of the same thing. There's always a fear that something will go wrong, right? And one could argue in that vein, if you believe that something's gonna go wrong, something will go wrong, and you're manifesting it. That's kind of like, see, that's two sides of the same coin. And it's kind of a bullshit argument in this standpoint, right? Because there's always going to be that fear. Like a quote that randomly, uh, it's not really a quote, but it's kind of a saying for me. It's like wherever there's light, there will be a shadow casted, right?
Hmm.
For every for every yin there's a yang, right? For every sun there's a moon, right? It's the same kind of notion. Like fear, indecision, and doubt will always exist with every. So fear will always be there when you have to make it. Like when you have to step into something, right? You have to start or finish something. You're always fearful about it, especially something new. Indecision will always come when you have to make a tough life choice, right? Indecision always happens when you're at a fork in the road, right? And then doubt. You will always have one. If it's not self doubt, you'll always have people doubting you.
Hmm.
It works in it doesn't matter how you perceive life. These enemies, you could kill success. I mean, they're always going to be around, no matter how you like think about it, no matter how much you try to avoid it, right? They're just things you can't avoid. And I think this is a very good time to quote an anime that I love dearly from Naruto, right? Madara said, you need to wake up and face reality.
Hmm.
This is part of it. Facing fear, indecision, self-doubt, and facing all the things that will happen, right? Because with every success there's a failure, right? With every journey forward there's going to be obstacles, and it's a matter of accepting it. It's a matter of realizing that there's things you can do, and then realizing there's things you can't do, and then you have to accept that you can and can't do certain things,
Hmm.
right? And I just think it's wholeheartedly it goes together, and it's a lot easier as we even read these books and say it as people present it, because people only see that this is great, this is a point made in the book. Everyone's seen Henry Ford's success, right? But they didn't see how hard he worked to get to the point where he got. Everyone only sees the result, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with the first story in the book with Thomas Edison's partner. I forget homie's name, right? But they only saw him as Thomas Edison's partner. They didn't realize he came in and basically was like, "Yo, like he started from the bottom. He's an example. He started
Hmm.
from the bottom. He worked and he waited for his break." But people don't know that, right? Even in today's modern entrepreneurship world, people look and see like, oh wow, Jeff Bezos, he's worth a gajillion billion dollars, but homie started in his garage working real hard. Albeit, people will start talking about this is another thing mentioned in the book, the ifs of life, like if I had an opportunity, if I was more lucky, if this, if that, right? That goes to your mindset, and if you constantly dwell on those ifs and what ifs might happen to you, right? You're gonna just be stuck in a perpetual cycle, and that's not accepting reality for what it is like, yeah, sometimes lucky breaks happen to certain people, but if you don't put yourself in a position to even get a lucky break, right, at that point, you're kind of like a hater.
Yeah.
you know and it's just funny because it's all because you'll see people with either even in the right mindset have a very secular argument with themselves, right?
Hmm.
And it kind of goes to the whole back to the whole believing, having a positive mindset, but then also practicing and visualizing yourself with that positive mindset, right? I can do all the right things. I think I'm a living example of this right now. I'm going through and I'm saying all this crap, but like, you know I have a very positive outlook on everything I do, but there's still something subconscious in me that I'm like, man, like I need to get up today and I have to do this. Like you're always fighting your inner demons, as everyone says. And
Yeah.
I think this book really highlights that you have to accept and realize what your inner demons are and kind of come to terms with it. All right.
Beautiful.
Monologue over. Oh man, that was a mouthful.
Hey man, so we're coming up on an hour and five here. So I guess if there's nothing, if there is anything that we didn't go through that you want to touch on, feel free. Me personally, I think I'm good on my notes. But
Yeah, I
of
think I hit
course,
everything.
you hit everything perfect. So let's
Yeah,
get right
hit
into it. Do you
everything.
recommend the book?
Yes, but do not listen to it. I
Oh,
firmly recommend getting a printed version of it.
okay.
Like so, this ties into each other, right? The book basically says like you're not going to learn everything from this book in one go, right? You're not going to one listen, one read, whatever it may be. You're not going to get everything from it. You're going to have to reread it and re-listen to it, right? So in that sense, I think it kind of works a little bit better. Like I think you should get it in person, read it, highlight, margin, circle, underline, make note of things that really stand out to you, right? And then give it a listen,
Hmm.
because I think that order might work a little bit better for you, because then you might start hearing things. that you didn't really like, that you didn't read, or vice versa. You might have read something and then it sounds different in your head the way it's narrated. So I definitely recommend the book in general, but the order in which I think you should go about it is definitely get a physical copy of the book, read the book, and then give it a listen a second go around. What
Fair
about you?
enough. Fair enough. Hey, I feel the same. I recommend it. Of course, I recommended it to you. I've recommended it to many people.
Right.
It's funny because when I think about books, just logically speaking, I don't think, hey, I need to read that book again. But as we're getting older, for sure, man.
True.
Like this is a book I will probably read maybe twice yearly. And the reason
Right.
being is they even say it within the book, right? The author or the narrator says, read this chapter 3 times. Read this chapter over until you get the
Hmm.
point. Because they say within the book, somewhere early, like first chapter or something like that, you can read this book over and over, and every single time you read it, you will get some piece of gold.
Right.
And I agree, right? There are things that I read this time around, the second time around, that I didn't really catch the first time around. I don't know if it's because I listened, and
Hmm.
maybe to play to your point, yeah, I need to maybe sit down and literally read it and make notes on the book. However,
Right.
overall, I recommend it. I think it's a great expansion of 3 Feet from Gold. If you want to go with a shorter narrative type, maybe go to 3 Feet from Gold, which is it's rich in value as well. But I do feel
Right.
like this one for sure a recommendation for me.
Definitely read it.
Yep. So
All
are
right.
we
All
picking
right.
from the wheel this week? Yeah.
Yep. Let's wheel it up.
All right, let's wheel it up. Let me pull it up real quick because I did not pull it up earlier.
Right. I'll pull up our list.
Perfect. Wheel of names, and you want me to share it with you, or you want me to just do it on my end?
You can just do it on your end. It's cool.
Okay, perfect. So actually, if I put it right here, they can see it. So you guys will be able to see it on stream, guys. We're gonna just shuffle it like I always do, a couple times, and we're gonna see which book it is right now. We're rolling, Tom.
All right.
The narcissist in your life.
Interesting.
The narcissist in your life. Oh, that's an interesting title. Very interesting so far.
Was this one of my books? I think it was.
It might have been, yeah, because I've never heard
It
of it.
is. I'm looking at our list right now. This is one of the books I put down. And you know what's really funny? This book actually wasn't recommended by anything or anyone to me. I was actually in Barnes and Nobles walking around one day, just
Mm-hmm.
looking at the personal growth and health section, and I just seen this. It's a very interesting cover. So if you're following our Instagram, we'll post what book we're reading, who it's by, with a little synopsis of the book. So if you want to give us a follow there at the Legacy Liftoff, that'd be awesome. But the cover of this book is actually what stood out to me, right? I
Okay.
didn't bother looking or reading anything else. I saw the cover, had a catchy title, it looked pretty, and I was like, shit, let's mark this down and add it to the list. And here
Nice.
we are. I get to go through it. So should be fun.
Perfect. Hey,
Should be
so Melly is asking who is it by? I actually don't know. So if you know off the top of
It
your
is
head,
by I have the information right here. It is by
perfect.
Julie L. Hall.
Julie L.
So
Hall, Melly.
the narcissist in your life by Julie L. Hall.
Perfect. You want me to catch up on the comments real quick? Melly was out here going crazy for us on the comments here.
Yeah, let's go through it.
She was just basically reaffirming as we were talking. A lot of yeses, a lot of wow, a lot of gotta be in it to win it, which I like. She said you're on point today. I'm pretty sure that was to you because you were on fire when she said that.
I was just
Um,
talking to you.
yes, sir. Yo, so listen, man. It's always a pleasure, Tom, to break these books down. I think we had a really good dialogue today, just back and forth. Really good points made on both sides. We kind of swayed outside of the book a little bit, which I like because when we're reading these books, our opinions, like on I guess our perspectives on life and how we perceive it is also very important. So I
Right.
encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, man. I'm gonna keep on, trying to provide
You
value
do,
in
yeah,
that
you
way.
do what you need to do. Right. And we'll just go through it, break it down, and keep on learning, developing, and we'll tell everyone the same thing we tell each other throughout the week as we're reading through these books. Oh, like this stuff kind of relates to exactly what I'm reading.
Exactly.
Or we've read this already, or this seems very familiar. It's just really interesting that we run through this overlap before we get onto this with everyone anyway. So it's been a pleasure, and it's a fun journey, and I'm hoping whoever's listening, whether when you're listening, you know what I mean, you can join us for this journey at any time and learn something and pick something up, and share your opinions with us as well,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what this whole thing really is, right? It's just us trying to share our opinions, thoughts on a book, and kind of as we did today, kind of delve into how these things relate into life realistically sometimes. So,
Copy. So just to
all
end
right,
it
brother.
off, right before we go, she says, "I love how your different perspectives are similar but different in ways," and I agree, Tom. So thank you for the back and forth, man. It really stimulates my thinking.
Right. Same, brother. Same.
All right, my guy. Pleasure.
All right, man. Take care.
Take care, brother. This was the Legacy Liftoff episode 5, guys. My name is Steve. That's my boy Tom, and we're out of here, man. Be safe, guys. All right, brother. You still here?